I'm just gonna have to kind of hope this is in focus. I wish I was better with this camera, but the truth is, I'm still an amateur, as much as I wish I wasn't an amateur. So if anyone's got any tips in, you know, using a Canon 60D, let me know. But until then, hi! This is really strange because I haven't done it in a long time properly, ever since my last video. Just gonna have to kind of hope this is in focus, even though I'm not really quite sure if it is or not. I have to use my glasses to focus the camera. You haven't seen a lot of me this past year, mainly because, you know, of health concerns. And I don't know if a lot of you will know, you know, people that have known me from my Facebook, you know, people that follow me on Facebook, they know everything more or less because I've been updating everybody on my Facebook page constantly. But I haven't had time to make videos. And a lot of people would have noticed that I've not really, you know, uploaded as many like happy, cheery, random videos this year because for the past year, it's been a really difficult year for me, a very difficult year. And by the way, my hair looks pink, but it's actually purple going into pink. I'll insert a picture here so you can actually see what it really looks like. What? But yeah, that's besides the point. So, a lot of you who watched my video before this one, the one that, you know, I don't know if it's going to be my graduation video before this, or if it'll be the video of me on my hill, but I took you guys to the hill that's like not too far from my house. And, you know, that video I recorded, it kind of creeps me out because I feel as though I already knew what was coming, but I didn't, if that makes any sense. Like, and it's funny because that video was it was edited apart from the beginning of it before I even knew what was happening. For those of you that haven't watched that video, and for those of you, you know, who may be new to my channel, I'm 3 weeks post-op at the moment. I had acute appendicitis. It was acute complicated appendicitis. It turns out I had it for 6 months without even knowing. I was in and out of hospital, and a lot of you have asked me if I'm actually taking legal action against the first hospital that kept misdiagnosing me or sending me home, you know, because just they were too lazy to find out what was wrong with me, and they were doing really rough, you know, rushed, like, you know, tests. They weren't really putting in a lot of effort to find out what was wrong with me, and they just kept putting it down to, you know, bloatedness and IBS and silly things like that, when in reality my health was actually, it was deteriorating before my eyes. I don't really want to go into too much detail, you know, about going in and out of the hospital and what happened and yada yada, because it's pretty pointless really, and I don't think a lot of you will want to know like the ins and the outs of it. But I think I went to the hospital probably about 5 times in total in the past 6 months, maybe even more, and they just kept fobbing me off. And obviously a lot of people have been asking me, you know, and I am taking legal action, so I probably shouldn't talk in too much detail in this vlog about the ins and outs of it. The bottom line is I went to a different hospital and I was put on a tablet for 2 weeks because they thought there was a possibility I might have pelvic inflammatory disease caused by my miscarriage, which is also something a lot of you won't know. Now I'm choosing to be open about it in this video because I just want to put things behind me, and I know there's a lot of people on my Facebook page that already know this, but I haven't been open about it in a video, and I feel as though now I'm ready to actually, you know, be open about it because it doesn't hurt as much to talk about it anymore. That was in February, and I wasn't planning it, you know, things happen. I hope people don't comment on this video and say, well, what do you expect when you don't use protection? Because I was being very, very careful, and we both were, but, you know, shit happens in life, and, well, not shit happens is the wrong phrase, but, you know, it wasn't meant to be. Not as if I had appendicitis and then I went to the hospital and then they were like, yeah, you've got appendicitis, and they did a bit of keyhole surgery. It was a lot more complicated than that. Because of the time that the first hospital wasted misdiagnosing me and sending me home, I started to lose weight. I lost my appetite. I became very, very ill. I became lethargic. I became a little bit mentally unstable. I became a lot weaker. I don't know if you guys can see with my arms, but my boobs are gone now, which is kind of sad because I loved my boobs. Because of the time that the first hospital spent misdiagnosing me, when the second hospital came to me, you know, to inspect me, they just kind of, they didn't rule out appendicitis, but they put me on something that would, you know, fight any kind of infection that might have been possibly brewing, or, you know, if I had pelvic inflammatory disease because of my miscarriage and things like that, because there was a lot of speculation that I was having an ectopic miscarriage, and, you know, they thought that that could have been something to do with it. Now, the first hospital kept sending me home with antibiotics, and because they kept doing that, it was weakening my immune system and making me more ill, because they were giving me antibiotics for something that I didn't have, something that I didn't need, and they kept sending me home over and over and over again, and in the process of this, they were damaging my liver slowly, and it wasn't curing my appendicitis. They never ever, you know, performed the surgery that they should have done, really, because I was going in and out, you know, with the same symptoms all the time. And I knew there was something wrong with me, and I kept saying, but they just kept ignoring me. And, you know, anyway, I said I wasn't going to go into too much detail, and I'm going into too much detail. Basically, you know, I spent 2 weeks on a tablet, you know, taking this tablet every day, and that was, you know, fighting the infection my appendix was actually causing. Because what had actually happened is I'd had appendicitis for such a long time, like, you know, an unbelievably long time, that I didn't realise, I didn't know that I had appendicitis until after my surgery. What happened was, I woke up in the morning and I was feeling so horrible. I felt like death. I thought that I was going to die. That sounds like, you know, I'm being drastic, because sometimes appendicitis can be a very simple thing, you know. Oh, you've got appendicitis, a little bit of keyhole, laparoscopy, you know, voila, you're done. But with me, because it had been left inside me for so long, and I'd been given all these wrong antibiotics, and, you know, I was being misdiagnosed and all that crap, that when I stopped taking the tablets that the second hospital had given me, I woke up that morning in intense pain and agony, and I felt like death. I went to the hospital, and it was a case of they kept me overnight and they monitored me and they hooked me up to a drip and they watched me. And I deteriorated further, and the next day they gave me a scan, and when they gave me a scan they were horrified to find that all of my downstairs, but not my vajayjay, but my pelvis area, and, you know, where my appendix are, and, like, you know, all of that crap, my ovaries and things like that, it was all inflamed. And when they found, you know, how inflamed I was down there, they were like, whoa, uh-oh. And I remember the horror in the scanner's face when he looked and he said, you're gonna have to have surgery today. And I was kind of like, whoa, because I'd kind of been thinking, you know, maybe I could avoid having surgery. Like in that vlog, I was like, you know, I hope I don't need surgery, because that hospital had already made an appointment for me to have the laparoscopy, you know, to see what was going on if those tablets didn't work. And then when they turned around and they told me if I didn't have emergency surgery that day I would die, I was kind of like, right. And they said, like, they didn't turn around and go, you will die if you don't have surgery today. They turned around and said, because the first thing I said is, oh, do I need surgery? Do I have to have surgery? Ah, panic mode, panic mode. And then they turned around to me and they said to me, if you don't have this emergency surgery today, you know, there's a possibility you're not going to make it. And I was just like, fuck. Like, oh my God, you know, as far as I was aware, they didn't know it was appendicitis, but they said that it looked inflamed in that area, so there's a high possibility it was appendicitis, or, you know, I possibly had like cysts or something, or he said there's something looked like it was spilling. The scanner said something looked really, really, really dodgy down there, like, you know, and they said that they had to perform the emergency surgery. So I was very weak and ill, and, you know, I had to prepare myself for in case I didn't make it. And it sounds really dramatic, but my life, you know, it just all kind of fell into perspective, and it was a really intense experience for me. It was really, really surreal when they turned around and they told me that I needed emergency surgery, and it would be in a few hours, because my biggest fear in life is literally having surgery. So it was something that I had to overcome. But, you know, when they turn around and they tell you, like, you know, if you don't have this surgery, you're gonna die, it's a case of, I've got to have the surgery, I've got to combat this fear. It's not like I can tell them, you can't operate on me. And I felt so anxious, it was terrifying. My brain was everywhere, my heart was everywhere, and it got to the point where I had all my family in this room on the ward. I had Niall there, my Yayan, Bapu, my dad, you know, all my brothers and sisters and things like that. And I had to go around, I'm not going to go into too much detail, go around each family member and tell them how much I loved them. I had to turn around to my brother Nathaniel, who's 11 years old, and basically give him a piece of life advice, you know, and it was just something as if, like, I felt as though in my heart he needed to know just in case anything happened. And I had this gut feeling I wasn't going to make it, but obviously that was combined with terror, because I was having surgery, so I was obviously going to think the worst. Like, I felt as though I just wanted to give him this little piece of life advice just in case I didn't make it. And I was panicking so much, and it was horrible, because I physically said, and emotionally said, and mentally said everything I wanted to say to the people in the room, and I prepared myself just in case I never saw them again, and it was one of the scariest things in my life. You know, when they were scanning me and stuff, I didn't realise how bad it was, and I didn't realise, you know, how serious it was. I didn't realise that, you know, that was it. That could be my last day. You already know that I am bipolar. You know, I do suffer from depression, I have anxiety issues and all of these things. And I have tried to take my own life, which I'm not proud to say, because I feel as though suicide is a very selfish thing, you know, for the people around you. And I do believe that, you know, there's a lot of beauty in the world and you should be around to see it. and I haven't tried to do something like that for a very long time, which I'm really, really proud of. But the bit that's, you know, scary is this was the first time I wasn't in control. Like, you know, as crazy as it sounds, when you try to take your own life, you're still in control. Even though you feel so out of control, like everything is against you and the world is ending, you're still in control. I wasn't in control this time. For the first time in my life, I wasn't in control of my own life. And I couldn't just, you know, snap out of it, or I couldn't just like drag myself out of it, or just, you know, fail and then be fine. It was a case of, this is it now. And I signed everything, you know, and you have to sign just in case anything does happen and yada yada. And I told them that I wanted to be an organ donor if, like, you know, I did die or whatever. So it was very serious. And then when they came with the big thing for me to lie on to take me into theatre, and the anaesthetic guy came and explained everything to me. He took me in. I was in the anaesthetic room, anaesthesia room, or whatever you want to call it, and they was injecting me with stuff and things like that. I said, could I just have a moment, you know? And they said, yeah, before they inserted the one that would just make me fall asleep and I wouldn't remember anything. And I looked to the right of me, and there was this painting, and it was the most terrible painting I'd ever seen. It was morbid, it was black and white, it wasn't tasteful, it wasn't beautifully done, it wasn't like the last thing that you wanted to see just in case you didn't wake up, and it was just kind of like, I had a very sarcastic thought in that moment that, really? If that's the last piece of art that I'm ever going to see with my own two eyes, I'm going to be pretty disappointed. That's how I kind of realised I've still got my sense of humour in a bad situation, so I guess that's good. And then all of a sudden, you know, all of these faces just, woof, and I saw, you know, people, like I think every single person in my life that I've ever had feelings for, cared about, or the people that have meant a lot to me, like friends and people like that, they all just, I saw them all. And it was a really like, whoa. But it happened so fast, you know, like it was weird. And then before I knew it, I was asleep, and then I woke up afterwards. Bearing in mind that at this point, I actually didn't realise that I had, you know, just about made it. I didn't realise how serious it was, you know, even though in my gut, and even though they'd warned me, and even though they'd said all this, and, you know, there's a little part of me preparing for the worst and being a bit paranoid and yada yada, I didn't realise how bad it was. And when I woke up in the recovery room, there was this beautiful, beautiful nurse sat there, and she had, like, you know, a little cup of water and a straw, and I tried to get up instantly, and I think a lot of you that have had surgery have probably tried to do the same. It's just, apparently it's instinct, and apparently like nearly every person does it. No! I'm gonna sit a little bit forward. It's too hot to have a fringe today. I don't know why, but I felt a little bit too close to the camera, even though I'm still pretty close. I just feel like I look weird in my reflection. Now I'm back to square one. When I woke up from the anaesthetic, while I was still under, you know, the influence, I felt very drunk, and I looked to the right of me and I thought Niall was there. Instantly I just thought he was there, and I started talking to him, and then the nurse turned around and she was like saying, who are you talking to? Nobody's there. And then reassuring me. Then I looked in front of me, and I hadn't even, you know, come to the realisation. I wasn't clear enough. I didn't realise, like, there was people in front of me and stuff. I just saw the nurse and Niall, apparently, when Niall wasn't even there. And there was people there, and then they turned around to me and they more or less congratulated me on being alive, and I was just kind of like, right, okay then, you know, is that normal? Do they do that to every single person, you know, that has surgery? Like, is that normal? Is it kind of like a well done, you got through it, even though most operations, you know, are successful? It's very rare that anything bad happens, or, you know, but I was kind of like, what? And it turns out that my operation had gone from being, you know, they told me, oh, it'll be 1.5 hours maybe, it'll be a laparoscopy, 3 small incisions, you know, we'll go in there with cameras, we'll see what's going on, you know, if you've got appendix, we'll just take them out of the laparoscopy holes, you know, if you've got appendicitis, if you've got, like, you know, a cyst, we can get it out through that, we can clean you, yada yada. Instead of it being 1.5 hours, it was 4.5 hours of surgery, and that isn't even an exaggeration, I wish it was. And they didn't cut me 3 times, tiny little holes. Well, they did, but then they also gave me a huge scar, and they pulled my appendix out of that, and they struggled a lot. And they told me that my appendix was necrotic, and it was perforated, and it was shriveled up, and it had been leaking, you know, possible infection and horrible nasty things into my body for God knows how long. I hadn't burst, apparently, but, like, yeah, they had a hole in it and it was shriveled up, so it's like they thought that maybe, you know, there was a possibility that I could have had peritonitis, like, you know, yada yada, but they couldn't understand, you know, how I had been getting on with my life with having such a really, 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 like, rotting piece of, you know, it's a rotting organ, effectively, inside my body, and I was just getting on with my life like normal, even though I felt ill and horrid. And he turned around and basically told me, They turned around and basically told me that I was lucky to be alive and that my appendix was stuck to my insides, and like, you know, that's a pretty scary thing to happen. Like, oh, has anyone noticed the fan, by the way? It's been really hot in England recently. Like, you know, I kind of feel like I'm in America. You can go to hell, mosquito. You've already got me 5 times. You are not getting back in here. You are a whopper. You are not biting me. Anyway, sorry. Kind of like that experience in itself was absolutely... Poof. And, you know, it made me reevaluate everything in my life, you know. I was on the ward, same ward as somebody, you know, who had cancer that was waiting to be transmitted to another section of the hospital. And on my right, you know, I had a 90-year-old woman called Joyce, and she was lovely, and she would sit on my bed every day before, like, bedtime and talk to me about things, and she told me she'd seen the world and she'd done all these things and that she could happily die there and then, and that, you know, she would happily be content because she lived her life to the fullest, and that just kind of, you know, reassured me that that's the correct way to think in life. I made friends with, like, nearly every woman on the ward. They were all really lovely, like, you know, apart from one, they were all elderly women. But they were all really, really interesting characters, and they all kind of, like, you know, reassured me that everything was going to be okay before my operation and afterwards, you know. I had an insight into all of their lives with, like, the conditions that they had and why they were there, and, you know, and it really did put my life into perspective. In my life, I've always had a lot of respect for the elderly people. You know, I hate it when people, you know, talk down to or abuse or steal from the elderly. I think that's absolutely disgusting. It's one of my pet peeves because I believe that you should always respect your elders, you know. If someone's been on this planet, you know, for like 30 more years than you, 60 more years than you, or God knows how many years more than you, even like 3 years more than you, a lot of the time, not all the time, because I can think of a lot of people that have less life experience than me and are actually older than me. But the majority of the time, they've been through things and seen things that you haven't, and you've got to remember that's going to alter that person's mind and the way that they think and what they've been through and how they act. And, you know, I don't know if I can explain that properly, but I feel like because of that, you should always have a lot of respect, you know, for that individual. I think you should have respect for everybody, but that's, I don't know if I'm making the right point. You know, that was the traumatic experience, but it didn't stop there. Like, for me, after the surgery, I was on intense antibiotics through a drip for about 3 days, you know, to eliminate the possibility of peritonitis because my appendicitis was so severe. I was very, very ill, and, you know, I had to learn to walk again, and that sounds crazy and a bit over the top, but, you know, I couldn't walk physically, and I was in a lot of pain, and I had to face all of these things. I had to go and get staples taken out when I eventually went home, which were another phobia of mine, was staples or stitches and things like that. It's absolutely terrifying. I combated a lot of things when I came home. It wasn't just like, right, you've left the hospital now, this is where everything gets better, you know, yada yada. As excited as I was to be home, the trauma for me and the horribleness and the stress did not stop there. Like, you know, my yaya, my grandma, that's Greek, you know, she had to shower me, she had to help me in and out of the shower. I had to wash my hair separately from my body. You know, I couldn't use the smelly nice soaps that I loved using. I had to use like this other soap. Like, you know, it would hurt to go to the toilet, it would hurt to sit down onto the toilet, I would have to physically have help to get off the toilet, and my own boyfriend shaved my legs. And I know that sounds crazy, but, like, you know, I got a whole new completely different respect for my boyfriend after that as well, even though I respected him obviously and I loved him to pieces, but even after that, you know, it's like when you're a girl, shaving your legs is one of those things that we like to pretend, you know, oh, guys are never going to watch us do that. Maybe when you're married to them, they see you do everything or whatever, when you live together. But it was, you know, it was a weird experience. Like, you know, it was kind of like, I'd never expected for that to happen, not until we got married or something like that. I'm not trying to scare him off if he watches this video. But what I'm trying to say is I battled a lot of things, and, like, you know, I had to sleep sat up until like a week ago. Still, when I lie down, I have to put a cushion under my knees. You know, I suffered from insomnia, and then I got put on the wrong medication. I ended up having anxiety attacks, like one of which was, I think, a week ago. I took something or other. Clarithromycin, okay, they gave me that because I was allergic to trimethoprim. Now, they put me on trimethoprim for a bladder infection about 2 weeks post-op, and I started to get this really, really tight chest and felt horrible, and I felt like I couldn't breathe properly, but not to the point where I couldn't breathe, like I was going into anaphylactic shock or something like that. Obviously, wasn't agreeing with me. They advised me to go to the hospital, but they said don't call an ambulance, you can't have an ambulance for this kind of small allergy, you need to make your own way there. my yaya couldn't afford to get a taxi to take me there. I couldn't physically afford at the time because I've not been able to work. I've not been able to do a lot of modelling because literally the past year has been hell for me. I haven't been able to make as much money as I wanted to. All of the money I got from university, I had to go straight on university and transport and things like that. And a lot of the time I had to go on things like trips to the hospital, taxis back from the hospital, things that I shouldn't even, you know, have needed to do at the time because they'd have found out what was wrong with me in the first place and actually made an effort to do so and scan me properly and not just took me in overnight and left me there with like blood tests and that's it, you know. Going through a lot at the moment, and I just make people aware that I'm not just dilly-dallying about and I can't be arsed making videos. I have legit reasons. And you little bastard just bit me, fucking mosquito. I was having an allergic reaction to trimethoprim and we had no way for me to get there. I called my dad. Dave couldn't take me. I think he was out of the country. You know, I was screwed and I was thinking, right, I'm just gonna have to get a taxi and then maybe like get a shark loan or whatever, like to pay for half of it. Because I had enough money in my account, just about, but like I was £10 short or something ridiculous. And so I was panicking, you know. My yaya ended up calling my mother. Now, a lot of you will know here on YouTube that, you know, me and my mother, you didn't know. It's a long, complicated story, but she's basically a sociopath and I don't associate myself with her. My yaya ended up calling her and she ended up coming round and she sat there and started saying, you're not allergic to penicillin, you're not allergic to this and that, and just started having a dig at me and trying to wind me up. And you've got to remember, I was in recovery. I couldn't even stand up straight at this point. I just got up to, you know, leave. I just got up to move. She kicked me in the stomach and yeah, that's pretty deep shit for me to say. But it was horrible. Doing what she did, didn't feel any remorse, carried on screaming. I phoned the police, then I ended up stood in front of the car even though I was crying my eyes out, and the neighbours were just like, what's going on? And my mum was like, she's bipolar, she's crazy, meh meh meh. And I ended up lifting up my dress and showing my scars, which weren't even healed yet, to like the whole street because they didn't believe me that I'd had an operation, because she turned around and said, she's lying, she hasn't had her appendix out, she hasn't had an operation, she's just lying. Like, how would I lie about that? Collapsing at the curb because I didn't have enough energy to, you know, stand there in front of a car like an idiot. Because of that, I ended up with internal bruising on the side and they thought that she might have damaged my spleen, and I ended up back in hospital. And I ended up being rushed with an ambulance because I ended up calling the police because of what happened. The police came and I was having a panic attack. They couldn't get anything out of me. She drove off. She'd escaped from the premises, you know. After that experience, I collapsed at the side of the road and in agony. And then the police came and then the ambulance came. And, you know, I've had to like sort out a load of other things since then. And, you know, in the process of sorting lots of complicated things out. But I've had enough now because that's... you never think that your mother's gonna do that. Like, she's got a lot worse over the past couple of years, like really extreme behaviour. When I went to the hospital, they gave me steroids. They gave me steroids to counteract the reaction I was having to the trimethoprim, and then that's when they put me on the really bad antibiotic, which was clarithromycin, which made me feel like I had flu, and like, you know, everything became hypersensitive. I've never been in so much pain in my life. I was having a panic attack. My hands were going really like numb and shaking, and pins and needles everywhere all over my body. And like, normally when I have a panic attack, it's not to that extreme. That was more an anxiety attack, and people say an anxiety attack is the same as a panic attack. Meh. There's different levels. I'd never felt pins and needles in my hands before, and the tightness in my chest to that extreme. I'd never felt that weird drunk feeling before, and I ended up in the hospital with that, and they ended up sending me home because my blood and everything was fine. Got home, didn't take any more of them, and then a couple of days later I still felt like I couldn't breathe, and I was having like about 3 anxiety attacks a day, something ridiculous like that. It was horrible. I was terrified. My bipolar was all over the place, and it turns out you're not even supposed to give clarithromycin to people that have underlying mental illness. They're not supposed to have it, so that was like stupid, considering I always make them aware that I have these problems before they diagnose me with anything. And basically what happened is I ended up back in A&E and phoning Scarlet Saint. Hello, Kira. How do you do? I probably shouldn't be mentioning this in a video. You're gonna be watching this and just being like, oh, hi. Thank you for mentioning me. Perfect plug time. If you haven't checked out her channel, maybe you should. I'll put her face here. No, I won't, because I can't be bothered editing with Final Cut Pro right now. So I'll put it somewhere else. I might just put a picture of like her face. But I ended up just calling her randomly out of the blue, and I don't know if this is the first time we've spoken on the phone before, because we talk like obviously outside of YouTube and like, you know, on Facebook and things like that. But like I ended up calling her up while I was like semi having a panic attack outside of A&E, even though I was with Nyla, my yaya, because I just felt like nobody could understand like like what I was going through. Like, you know, I just felt as though I felt a bit trapped, and I felt like she'd understand a little bit more, and I just kind of, she helped to verify that what I was experiencing was obviously an anxiety attack. It wasn't, you know, what I thought it was. Like, I physically thought that maybe I was dying, or that basically I was having another allergic reaction. And then when I finally got seen by the doctor, you know, they turned around and told me that that's what it was, and it was still the side effects in my system, and they only left a couple of days ago. I called Kira, and I was just kind of like, help, and then she just kind of managed to help me through it a little bit, and I became a lot more calmer once I realised that that's exactly what it feels like, because I'm normally used to a completely different level of panic attack. You know, that was like something else. Like, that was more anxiety, I feel as though, than more, it wasn't panic that I was dying, it was more like, I don't know how to explain it. I felt drunk, but I felt like I couldn't breathe, and then I felt like I was actually gonna die. So I suppose I was a bit panicky, but at the same time I was calm. It was really strange, and my brain was overreactive, and my bipolar was playing up a little bit, and I was just kind of like, uh-oh. And I was scared, and I felt trapped in my own body, but she managed to talk me out of it. So I just wanted to say a public thank you, because she really, really bloody helped me. She was like a godsend that day. And she just kept me calm, and, you know, checked on me and sent me a picture of a really weird cat. She kept me distracted for 10 minutes because I'm easily amused. After that, I went to the doctor, and the doctor turned around and said that I'm basically experiencing like very high anxiety. That doesn't make any sense, because there's no such thing as high anxiety, but basically high levels of anxiety, and that this would be putting a lot of stress on my bipolar state of mind, as well as my depressive state of mind and everything, and just like, and it was horrible, and I felt so trapped. And I said to Niall, I'm gonna have to go on medication now, aren't I? Because I honestly felt like that's what would have to happen, you know. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I've been trying to, like, you know, do my own thing for quite some time, and it's been working until I took that antibiotic. I just felt a lot more anxious. Water. So basically that was an experience in itself. And then every single day, like, you know, I felt really tired, I've had dizzy spells, I've felt sick, I've had all these symptoms, like my tummy's not been right, I've had ingestion problems, I've just been a mess. And my body's trying to recover from all the antibiotics and the operation at the same time. And at the moment, like I said, 3 weeks post-op. Another 3 weeks and I should be back to normal, and every day gets a little bit more normal and a little bit easier, which is a good sign. Overall though, I've really changed my perspective and my thoughts and my thinking process, and everything has just changed. But weirdly enough, I feel more like myself right now than I've felt for the past 6 to 8 months. Also, a few things I didn't mention to YouTube is I actually started smoking probably about 10 months ago. But I wasn't smoking a lot, I was smoking like 2 to 3 cigarettes a day, and I've completely quit now. I don't know, I started like cutting down before my operation, like way before my operation, because I was just kind of like, this is a little bit pointless, why am I doing this? But I kind of got into a bit of a habit. Like when I was stressed, I would have a cigarette, and when I was feeling a bit anxious or annoyed, I would have a cigarette. But like, you know, so I was kind of going to it a little bit, and then I kind of just woke up one day and I was like, I don't want to do this, I don't want yellow teeth, this is pointless, I'm wasting my money. Like, why am I buying a packet of cigarettes when I could buy like an eyeshadow or like lipstick? Priorities, Jess. Priorities. So yeah, basically, like, I've been cutting down a lot, and I haven't had one since. Like, I tried to have one about a week after my operation. I had one drag, coughed, didn't like it, snapped it in half and just thought, fuck that, put it in the bin. Just pointless, isn't it? Like, I think because I haven't been doing it for very long, it was easy for me to quit, but at the same time, like, that's probably not helped, like, tight chest wise and things like that, because they say that when you stop doing something, it can make you a bit more anxious if you're already an anxious person, or it can give you a bit of a tight chest when it comes to like smoking or whatever. The day of my surgery, like, she told me as well that smokers are more likely to experience problems with the anaesthetic and things like that, and I thought, I don't want to be in that bracket where I have problems with those kind of things. And generally I'm a very healthy person, like, you know, I eat a lot of fruit, I eat a lot of vegetables, I eat very healthy meals, I exercise on a regular basis. Like, if people have my Instagram, like, you'll see that I take pictures of my meals sometimes every day, or sometimes I forget, like I have a day off, because sometimes it can be arsed taking a picture of my food. Like, you know, I'm not like compelled to do it, I just like to do it to follow what I'm eating. So like, I was doing everything correctly, like, you know, the only unhealthy thing I was doing was smoking, and I wasn't even smoking that many, so it feels really like weird admitting that to YouTube, but I figured that I admit it to you guys, that whatever, it's not a big deal. I'm pretty sure some of you smoke and I don't judge you for it, like my boyfriend still smokes. I've just kind of been completely put off it now. But yeah, I feel a lot more like me, like Jess. I was getting lethargic, like the past year you'll notice I didn't do as much crazy things with my makeup, like I haven't been as experimental, I haven't been as hyperactive, I haven't been as like happy and things like that. I've had that. I've had the stress of university being in my last year, and on top of that, I've had the stress of like I was suffering from acute, complicated appendicitis this whole time, and I had no idea. I had absolutely no idea. Because the hospital just kept telling me I was okay. But you know what I want to tell you guys, seriously, if you feel in your gut something is wrong with you and you have an idea, it could be a certain thing, push. Just flipping push, because I felt that I could not trust hospitals and doctors because of what they did to me. I lost complete trust in them, and it's really played on my mental thinking process and my health and everything. And you know, I'm very lucky to be alive on the operating table. Like, you know, I almost died. I was in a state, you know, they were rushing against the clock because I was so messy inside, and I was incredibly ill. And I dropped from 9.5 stone to 7.5 or something ridiculous like that. It's horrible, it's scary. But it really put my life into perspective, and there's a few little tiny experiences that I wanted to share with you guys, other than what I've already shared with you, and I wrote them in my phone. Hospital thoughts, I will read them out to you. I wrote these the day, you know, before, like just before I had my scan. I was sitting in a coffee shop downstairs and I wrote these down. And these are just literally my thoughts, and I figured that I might share them with you guys. I feel as though sometimes certain thoughts that you have them for a reason. And sometimes I think that the thoughts that I have them to not only help myself, but to help other people. I just kind of wrote this in my phone, so I just figured that I would tell you them. Some of them are quite sad and depressing. Some of them are kind of like, I don't know, this is the kind of frame of mind that I was in. I want to put it into perspective, and I don't know, I take good from what I wrote here. Like to be this close. I'm so big on your screen. Do I scare you? I'll talk to you guys with my glasses on for the rest of this. Hello, Jingle Heart in glasses. I should have referred to myself as Jingle Heart. It kind of weirds me out a bit. There we go. I feel a bit more like myself.